Mesechus Gittin Daf Tzadi is the last daf in the Masechta. It begins with a Mishnah, which is the last Mishnah in the Masechta, and the Gemara's commentary on it. The sugya is what is grounds for divorce. So what is a reasonable reason that a man can divorce his wife? Of course, we have a pasuk that describes under what situations a divorce should happen. The Mishnah will bring three opinions of Tanaim. The Gemara will explain how they each derive their opinion from the pasuk. So let's see the Mishnah. The thrry opinions are as follows. Beis Shammai says, in order for a man to divorce his wife, he should not do so unless he has ervas davar, that is, she does something inappropriate, promiscuous, and that is intolerable. That is grounds for divorce. Anything less than that should not be used for a divorce. Now, Beis Hillel says she doesn't need a major offense like that, even something that just bothers him, like if she burnt a pot. Rashi says burning could mean through fire or through being overly salted, but that would be also, that would be grounds for a divorce as well. Rabbi Akiva says you don't need even that. You don't have to have a reason. If he decides he wants to marry someone else, she no longer finds favor in his eyes, then that is good enough. He can go ahead and divorce her without a specific reason. Now the Mishnah does provide the psukim which we learned this from. It's one pasuk. It's the pasuk which describes the situation of a man divorcing his wife. The pasuk actually goes further and says she then marries someone else, leaves him through death or divorce, and then wants to come back to the first husband. The pasuk says as follows: Ki yikach ish isha. When a man marries a woman and he is ba'al her, and it shall come to pass that she does not find favor in his eyes. Ki matzah ba'ervas davar. This word ki is going to be difficult to translate, but whatever it is, matzah ba'ervas davar. He found in her something erva, something objectionable, an objectionable thing. Will be questioned, how do you translate ervas davar? So then he should give her a get, put it in her hand, and send it from his house. Now the Gemara first explains the Machokes Beis Hillel Beis Shammai, and then the Gemara goes to Beis Hillel Beis Shammai as one unit versus Rabbi Akiva. So Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai both say you have to have a reason. The question is, what kind of reason? So Beis Hillel's reason is that it has to be a davar, a thing, anything. Beis Shammai says it has to be an erva, it has to be a real, promiscuous, objectionable activity. So Gemara quotes a brisa that spells out this machlokes here. Beis Hillel understands, the Gemara says, when it says ervas davar, it's two things. There's an erva and there's a davar, two different reasons. One is for an objectionable activity, like Beis Shammai said, and one is for a davar, just any other thing. Beis Shammai, however, holds it's one thing. It's an ervas davar, an objectionable thing. There is no separate davar here. That's not a separate grounds for divorce. Now, how do they each read it? So Beis Hillel says, if it would only say ervas and not davar, then it would only be telling me that you can get divorced for an objectionable thing. How do you know that you can get divorced even for a mild thing like burning a pot? That's why it says davar, that's a second thing. Now, why doesn't it only say davar? Now, I know if you need a very mild, minor offense as grounds for divorce, certainly in an ervas, something which is a real objectionable, you could get divorced. Beis Hillel says the reason why you need to say ervas is to teach me is that even in a situation where she didn't erva, still a second husband is allowed to come and marry her afterwards. It's not prohibited for her to get remarried further. And therefore you have davar and you have ervas. Now Beis Shammai says it's not two different things, it's ervas davar, it's one thing. What is the davar for? Why isn't it just say erva? So the davar is to teach me a gzeir shava to al pishnayim edim yakum davar, that you need two witnesses, or it says three, al pishnayim al pishleisha edim yakum davar. You need witnesses to establish that something really happened. Here also, you have to be clear. You have to know that this thing actually happened. Now, the Gemara asks, how does Beis Hillel understand that? So the Gemara says Beis Hillel has that drasha as well. However, if that's the only thing that it taught, it could have said erva bidavar. Erva bidavar would mean that it's an erva that is a thing. That if the erva and the thing were going together, that it was one item in erva, which is a thing which is an erva, then it should have said erva bidavar. And then it can use the word davar, and it's only one combined statement in erva b'davar. The fact that it writes it separately is to teach me that there's another thing happening here. You could have either the erva or the davar. Now, Beis Shammai says, you're right, it doesn't say erva b'davar, which would have been the right way to say it. But if we were to understand it like Beis Hillel wants, that either an erva or a davar, some other thing, it should have said oy erva oy davar. Why doesn't it say oy erva oy davar? The Gemara explains, Beis Hillel answers, no, the reason it says oy erva oy davar is to teach you that you should make a drasha from the davar here to have your connection to edim. So you got to write it a little bit wrongly in both ways. It doesn't say erva bidavar to teach you that you have two separate things, an erva or a davar. And it doesn't say oy erva oy davar to teach you that the davar is to teach you a limud in Hilchos Eidos. Okay, so now we know the machlokes between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai is ervas davar one thing, or is it two separate things, an erva and a davar. However, they both hold that you need to have an erva or a davar. Rabbi Kiva holds something else entirely. He holds when the pasuk begins and it says, Ki yikach eshishu uvalo v'hayom loisim tzachein be'einav, that's enough. Loisim tzachein be'einav means she no longer finds favor in his eyes. He doesn't want to be married to her anymore. He doesn't have to have a reason. And that's enough grounds for divorce. So the Gemara says, what is the machlokes between Rabbi Akiva, who says that phrase "loisim tzachein be'einav" is enough, and Rabbi Akiva, and what is the difference between that opinion of Rabbi Akiva and Beis Shammai? You say no, you need to have an erva davar, an erva oy davar. You have to have something along those lines. So Gemara says the difference is how you understand the word ki, because it says loisim tzachein be'einav ki matzah ba ervas davar. What does ki mean? So the Gemara says, we know that Rish Lakish says ki could be translated into any of four words. Ki could mean if, maybe, but, or because. In this situation, how do you translate it? So Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai say it means because. So you read it as follows: she no longer finds favor in his eyes, ki, because matzah ba'ervas davar. It's not two separate things. The lack of favor is because of the ervas davar. And therefore, you can't say that there's just a lack of favor without a reason. No, the lack of favor is based on the ervas davar. It's not a separate thing. Rabbi Akiva says, no, here it's translated as if. And therefore you have two things. If she no longer finds favor in his eyes, or if there's an ervas davar. Either of those two things are grounds for divorce. And that is how he says that these are two separate things here, and even if you just have that's enough for divorce as well. All right, now the Gemara says, Rav Papa said to Rava, what would be halacha l'maisa, according to Beis Hillel, which is how we're going to pass on halacha l'maisa, if a man divorces his wife without proper grounds. Beis Hillel says he has to have at least burnt the pot. What if she didn't? He just lo matzachein and he divorced her. Does he have to take her back? So Gemara says you could learn out of the halacha of a man who is ma'anis or mefateh, that he rapes or seduces a woman, that he has to marry her and he may not divorce her. The halacha, as we say in Makos, he violates a law if he divorces her, and he has a mitzvah, he has an obligation to take her back. That's why we said there he doesn't get malchus for it, because it's a law of anitek laseh. It's a violation which is correctable by a fixing action. So if you see from there, then only in that circumstance is there a mitzvah for him to take her back. Here, where it's not a ma'anis or mefata, there is no obligation to take her back. So therefore, the fact that he divorced her, even though he didn't have grounds for it, it still works, it's still chal. Now, it says Rav Mashashia to Rava, if a man has in mind to divorce his wife and she is unaware, she is living with him and serving him as usual. So is that a sin? So the Gemara says that Rava said on that, he quoted a pasuk in Mishlei, Al tacharosh el reacha rav hu yeshiv levetach itach. Don't plot wickedness against your fellow, and he is sitting, trusting together with you. So that's what this man is doing to his wife. Now, the Gemara quotes a brisa discussing three different types of ways that men are makbid on levels of inappropriate behavior or promiscuous behavior with their wives. So the Brisa says as follows. Rabbi Meir says that there are three different attitudes towards impurities in one's food. Some people are very much on the finicky side. They would not allow anything. Some people are kind of middle ground, and some people are really sloppy. They don't care at all. Same way you could have three levels of a man dealing with inappropriate behavior from his wife. He could be very strict on it. He could be kind of average, or he could just be very promiscuous in it as well. Now, so the Gemara goes through the food attitude and the comparative wife attitude. So Someone who's very makbid would be like Papas ben Yehuda. The Gemara says that if a fly flies into his cup, he would throw away the fly and throw away the drink. He wouldn't drink the drink at all afterwards. Papas ben Yehuda would lock his wife in the house whenever he left. He didn't want her talking to anybody. That is not correct. It's not proper. It's going to cause hatred between them. It's not the right attitude. Now, the normal way to do things is you take out the fly and you drink the drink. That's similar to the normal. What most people do is they don't care if their wife speaks to others, speaks to her brother, her relatives, no problem. Now, the third level is someone who has a fly fall into his food and he kind of like licks off the food from it and he doesn't care. So that is the behavior of the wicked. That is, a bad person would allow his wife to leave the house with her hair uncovered, allow her to spin thread and to knit in the street with her sleeves rolled up so that you can see her arms, not properly dressed. And he also allows her to wash with other people. So the Gemara says, what does that mean? He allows her to bathe with others? That is promiscuity for sure. The Gemara says, no, not that she actually bathes together with them, but she goes down to bathe as they're leaving. So they're already dressed, but they can see her. So that is promiscuous behavior as well. Now, says the Gemara, someone who behaves in this way, it is a mitzvah d'oraisa to divorce her, and that's what is meant by kimatza ba'ervas, that she should send him out of his house. Now, then it says, the continuation is v'holcha v'hoisel ish acher, so that means the simple pshat is that she goes and marries someone else. The Gemara's drush here is that she has treated her husband as an ish acher, as someone else. She's no longer faithful to him. He is no longer her only partner in this world. Now, if she then goes and she marries someone, that second person who takes her in is wicked. Because the first one sent her out for her wickedness. This one goes and takes into his home someone who's established for wicked behavior. That's inappropriate. Now, if the second one's lucky, if he's a zeiche, he'll just divorce her. He'll get to the point where he'll understand his mistake. And that's what the pasuk says next. That the first possibility is that the second husband will send her away, he'll divorce her. Now, if he's unlucky or if he's not zeiche, she will bury him, and that's why the pasuk continues afterwards that oy ki yamos or he might die. Those are the two possibilities as to what's going to happen next if somebody remarries this wicked woman who was sent away from her first husband. Now, the Gemara says that it's really appropriate for him to die because of what he did, because there's a wickedness in the fact that he took a established wicked person into his home. The Gemara now quotes a pasuk in Malachi. It says, Kisone shalach, you should send away the hated. Machlokes Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yochanan, how you interpret that. Rabbi Yehuda says, if he happens to hate her, it's a reason to send her away. That is like Rabbi Akiva's opinion. He doesn't have to have a reason, just a feeling. Rabbi Yochanan disagrees and says, no, she has to be sanoi lifnei hamokaim. She has to be hated in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Says the Gemara is actually not a machlokes. One is talking about a first marriage, one is talking about a second marriage. A first marriage is an Eshes Neurim, one's first wife. He should try to make it work much longer, and he should stick with it unless it's inappropriate for him to keep this marriage continuing. The Zivug Sheni, it's not, you don't have the same faith, and therefore it's much more easy to say that it's appropriate to dissolve a marriage like that with less grounds. Now the Gemara quotes a very famous Chazal discussing the first marriage and how painful it is to get a divorce like that. The Gemara quotes Rabbi Elazar, who says anybody who divorces his first wife, even the Mizbech itself cries tears. The Gemara quotes Psukim in Malachi, previous to the last one, and that's where we learn this halacha. So it says there, "V'zayis she'enis tasu kasos dimma es mizbach Hashem b'chi v'anaka." So you have tears falling from the mizbech, crying and screaming. Me'ein oid penos el mincha, no longer turning towards the carbon. V'kachas ratzon miyadchem, and taking desirous things from your hands. V'amartem al ma, and you'll ask on what? Al ki Hashem heid beincha vein eshes nurecha, because Hashem testifies between you and the wife of your youth, asher ata b'gadet ba, that you rebelled against her. V'hi chavertecha ve'eshes brisecha, she is faithful to you, and you rebelled against her. So this Mizbeach crying is linked and caused by this inappropriate divorce where someone doesn't try to make it work. So any divorce of an Ishes Neurim is a cause for the Mizbeach itself to cry. This concludes the Masechta. Hadron Alach Maseches Gittin v'Hadrach Alon. Hadron Alach Maseches Gittin v'Hadrach Alon. Hadron Alach Maseches Gittin v'Hadrach Alon.